Muslim Indonesia dijadikan contoh oleh dosen Kristen Amerika Serikat saat menjelaskan agama Islam kepada jamaah Kristen di gereja Amerika Serikat.
Is very large as well, and Islam is also the fastest growing religion. It is in the United States, and it is all over Europe and Africa, the continent of Africa, the Middle East, of course, but it's not correct to just associate Islam with the Middle East. In fact, it's larger in Indonesia and some other places.
Nah sahabat, mari kita saksikan bersama-sama videonya dan saya hanya sedikit mereaksinya.
Okay, so thanks for coming tonight, and thank you, Kevin, for recording these. Appreciate that, and hi out in YouTube land, those of you watching on YouTube. Did you get the two papers? One says Islam terms, and one says Muslim life. Okay, so when I teach religions, I like to give you some kind of a testimonial from somebody who's a practitioner of these religions, because, of course, as you know, I'm not a practitioner of Islam. So it is such a pleasure to teach Islam because I think this is a religion that has a lot of suspicion and fear around it. I think this is a religion that has been greatly misunderstood. And there's interest in this religion, though. There's curiosity to learn. When I first started teaching at Riverside Community College, it was in 2002. Remember what happened in 2001? So when 9/11 happened, it shook up everybody. So when I started teaching world religions, I had a lot of students that were just terrified of Islam. I mean, just absolutely terrified. That, over the years, seemed to go away, but then it would come back in waves. And so I remember one year, probably 2010 or 2011, around there, one year, I can't remember what year it was, when I had a student that was in the war, Iraq or Afghanistan. He had been deployed, and he was a very polite student, but he told me, I just can't be in your classroom when you're lecturing on Islam. And he said, I've just seen too much. And I said, I can't even imagine what you've seen in war, but I want you to know that what you saw is not Islam. It's, first of all, war, and secondly, culture. And he said, I'm totally in agreement with you. He said, I completely believe you, and yet I can't do it. It's because of his own, post-traumatic stress disorder that he was going through. So he didn't listen to the lectures on Islam because they were just too triggering. But at least he knew that the religion wasn't to blame for all the hell that he saw. And so he and I spoke individually about what Islam is and isn't, and we kind of parsed out some of that stuff. So there were some tough times. I remember there was one student who came to me and she said, my priest is, and this is nothing against all priests, it was just one individual, she said, my priest is telling our congregation that the Quran is telling Muslims to bomb Americans. And she said, is that true? And I said, no, America wasn't even known yet when the Quran was written. So I mean, just because things get made up and passed down doesn't make them true. So I suggested to her that she go buy a copy of the Quran. I mean, it's a book. It's in the bookstores. It's like at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. You could easily buy a copy, pick it up, and read it. Now, some things might be confusing, just like some things in the Bible are confusing, and you got to understand them in context, just like you do with biblical studies and with our Bible. But it certainly does not tell Muslims to go bomb America. I mean, no, of course not. So, but these are these kinds of rumors and fears and suspicions that have been built up around this religion that, in my day teaching, were not built up around Confucianism, Zen Buddhism, and some other religions. And so, therefore, I really enjoyed and still enjoy teaching Islam, because it helps people kind of settle down if they have those sorts of fears and stuff like that. So, have you heard things in our culture about Islam? I'm sure you have, right? Good, bad, and indifferent. What are some of the things, right or wrong, that you've heard in our culture about Islam?
They want to kill Americans.
Yeah, there you go, right? It wasn't just my one student. Yeah, it's all about terrorism and killing Americans, etc. Okay, first of all, that's totally wrong. as a fact of the religion, but it is something that some people have unfortunately heard in our culture. Okay, what else? Anything else?
I heard some strange things.
Terry, come on in. Yeah, go ahead.
That those people on the planes were going, what did they call it, when they went to more or less heaven?
It's generally referred to as paradise.
Paradise.
Mhm.
They would have 87 virgins.
Virgins, yeah, I've heard
Or
that
what,
as
there was
well.
a number to it.
Yeah,
Stupid
right.
as saying
And I'm
I
thinking,
put them on.
come on.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
dumb.
yeah, right. Anything else? Jerry, we're just talking about what people have heard about Islam, good or bad, right or wrong in our culture. Anything else? How about the status of women in Islam? Have you heard anything? Good or bad, right or wrong?
Yeah, they're just cows.
I'm sorry, they're what?
Treated badly.
Treated badly, yeah, like subjugated. Okay, so we've heard these things. So again, that's not true. So I mean, do you see how it's helpful then to talk about this stuff? Because if we don't talk about it, we just hear rumors from our friends who might not know, and we might consider this to be true. But imagine, I mean, we're all Lutherans in this room, and most Nazis were baptized Lutherans, unfortunately. And so imagine if, people were doing a show on Lutheranism or Lutheran Christianity, and they had, just this view of what Nazis do and say and stand for. Now, wouldn't you go, wait a minute, that's not fair, that's not right? And so that's very similar to some of this stuff happening. Islam is not about terrorism at all, any more than Christianity is about Nazism. But when you have that connection, and when that connection is given a lot of media time, then that is what is built up and that is what is known. So, thus my interest in teaching this religion so that I can, help people with a little bit of the fears and the wonders about that. So, Jerry, do you have those 2 pages?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the one Islam terms, those are some of the most important terms. We'll be going over some of them. And I will be writing a lot on the board as well. All right, so Islam. Islam is the name of the religion. The practitioners are called Muslim. So it's like Christianity is the religion and Christians are the practitioners, okay? So the name Islam is an Arabic name, related to the word surrender or submission. And what it refers to is surrender or submission to God. Do you know the Arabic word for peace? Salam. Salam. So Islam is related to that word for peace. So sometimes Islam, people say, means peace. But it means more like surrender or submission. And salam is related to the word shalom, which is the Hebrew word for peace. So they're all very connected here. In one simple phrase, this is the religion of Islam. Surrender or submission to God. Submitting to God. The Arabic word for God, and as we say before in a lot of religions should be cross-referenced with foreign languages here, because so many of the terms are of another language than English, and it might be unusual to you. The language that Islam uses is Arabic. And there are Arabic Christians as well, not just Arabic Muslims. I mean, Arabia is an area, geographical area. So the Arabic word for God is Allah. Allah just simply means God. And so Arabic Christians, when they refer to God, say Allah. It just simply means God. So whenever you hear somebody talk about, worshiping Allah, do not think of it, please, as they are worshiping some foreign, distant, bizarre God. They're literally saying we're worshiping God. Like you and I would be saying we're worshiping God. This is a Western religious tradition. Now, of course, it's in what we call the Middle East. It's actually all over the world. But it is in the family of Western religions. And so what we talked about before was how Judaism is the foundational religion for all of the Western religions. And then Christianity is built upon that foundation. It's larger numerically, but I just mean it's built on that foundation. And then Islam is built on the foundation of both of those. So these three have a lot in common. These three religions are much more similar than any of them would be to Hinduism or Buddhism or Shinto or Confucianism or something like that. That's an Eastern religious tradition. These all talk about the prophet Abraham. Remember the prophet Abraham? Okay, who understood that there was only one God. So all of these religions look back to the prophet Abraham as being sort of their spiritual prophetic leader. So we say in our Western traditions that we all belong to Abrahamic faiths. These three are all Abrahamic faiths. Meaning that if we're looking at like a family tree, Abraham, in terms of a person, not a divinity, but a prophet, Abraham is on top of this family tree with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and then there's a lot of branching off, but we all are related or cousins in a sense, or siblings of in this Abrahamic tradition. So we have a lot in common. One thing that we have in common is believing that there is only one God. So Judaism was the first to introduce that concept in the Western world, and this came out of the indigenous culture of the ancient Israelites, where, if you remember when we talked about primal religious traditions, almost every single primal religion was polytheistic. Remember talking about that? This belief in many, many, many gods. And so it was radical, really, for Judaism to say there is or there can only be one God. Christianity then followed suit and said there's only one God. Now, we have the work to do to talk about having a belief in a trinity. But there's not three gods, there's only one. That falls heavy work theologically for us to define what on earth we mean by that. Because it can sound like we're talking about three gods, or one God and then the Son of God who's not divine, right? So we have a complicated way of understanding one God. Islam also followed suit by saying that there is only one God. So Muhammad, who is a great prophet in Islam, is not divine. They do not understand Muhammad as divine. It is not equivalent to how Christians understand Jesus. Muhammad is only and forevermore and always will be a prophet, like we would talk about Moses or Abraham or some of the other prophets. Okay? But the similarity here is that we're all in the Abrahamic faiths, and one of the things that we have in common is that we all three believe that there is only one God. We are all monotheistic religions. So when Muslims talk about God, they often just use the Arabic term, Allah. It might be how you might hear a Jewish tradition say Yahweh, although in Judaism, Jews don't generally say that word. It's thought to be too sacred to say Yahweh. I'm only saying it because I'm a Christian and not a Jew. But that would be like the equivalent. It's a certain religious way to refer to God, but it just simply means God. Okay, today Islam has more than 1 billion followers, and so it makes Islam the second largest world religion. You know what the first one is, the largest world religion? Christianity. Christianity is the largest world religion by far, but Islam is very large as well. And Islam is also the fastest growing religion. It is in the United States, and it is all over Europe and Africa, the continent of Africa, the Middle East, of course, but it's not correct to just associate Islam with the Middle East. In fact, it's larger in Indonesia and some other places than it is in the Middle East. Since 9/11, the West has had great interest, particularly in America, about what is Islam, what is not Islam, should we be afraid of Islam? That was one of the big things after 9/11.
Masya Allah, sebuah pemaparan ajaran agama Islam oleh kalangan non-muslim, atau tepatnya oleh seorang dosen Kristen yang terlihat sangat baik pemahamannya tentang agama Islam. Meskipun beliau mengatakan bahwa untuk lebih fair dalam menjelaskan, beliau banyak disapot pengetahuannya oleh orang muslim. Di awal penjelasannya, dia banyak menjelaskan tentang agama Islam kepada orang non-muslim di Amerika Serikat, khususnya sejak kejadian 9/11. Dan dia menyatakan banyak siswa yang takut pada agama Islam. Beliau juga bercerita tentang siswanya yang pada tahun 2010 atau tahun 2011 terlibat dalam perang Irak atau perang Afghanistan. Dia sebenarnya adalah siswa yang sangat sopan, tapi dia memberitahu saya bahwa dia tidak bisa berada di kelas saya ketika mengajarkan tentang agama Islam. Dia bilang, sudah terlalu banyak melihat tentang perang di Irak atau Afghanistan. Saya katakan, saya ingin mengetahui bahwa apa yang Anda lihat di sana bukanlah dari ajaran agama Islam yang pertama. Yang kedua, itu mungkin hanya budaya. Meskipun dia menyatakan sepenuhnya setuju dengan pernyataan saya tersebut, namun dia tetap tidak bisa melakukannya. Itu karena gangguan stres pasca trauma setelah perang yang dialaminya di Irak atau di Afghanistan. Jadi dia tidak bisa mendengarkan ceramah tentang ajaran agama Islam karena itu terlalu memicunya. Tetapi setidaknya dia telah mengetahui bahwa agama tidak bisa disalahkan atas neraka perang seperti yang dilihatnya. Jadi kami berbincang secara pribadi kepadanya. Satu siswa saya datang untuk mengatakan bahwa pendetanya memberitahu jamaatnya bahwa Al-Quran menyuruh Muslim untuk membom orang Amerika. Apakah itu benar? Saya menyatakan bahwa itu tidak benar sama sekali. Anda tahu bahwa Amerika Serikat belumlah dikenal ketika Al-Quran dituliskan. Maksud saya, karena hal itu hanya dibuat-buat saja dan diwariskan dan tidak membuatnya itu menjadi sesuatu yang benar. Jadi saya sarankan kepadanya untuk membeli terjemahan Al-Quran di Amazon. Anda bisa membacanya dan mempelajarinya. Semoga dengan penjelasan ini Islam lebih mudah difahami dan dapat diterima oleh kalangan masyarakat Amerika Serikat. Nah sahabat, mungkin itu saja sedikit komentar dari saya. Sekian, wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.